Okay, thank you all very much. Those who are here and those who are on Zoom. So we start as usual with some motivation and the posture, and and also a sense that a sense of rejoicing, even we could say, or gratitude that we're able to meet together with like-minded people who are investigating the mind, investigating their lives. This is something worthwhile, very worthwhile. And hopefully we can create some positive energy together. So the posture, as you know, all of us, I think, needs to be upright and relaxed. So that combination of stability and relaxation is important. And the feet, if they're on the ground, they should be firmly planted on the ground. Back, it can be supported, but make sure it's relatively straight. Hands can be in the lap or on the knees or thighs. If you're feeling cold, you can put a cushion under your feet.
I'm fine.
You're okay?
I just have a sciatic issue.
Oh, okay. Then you just sit however is best for you. Yeah. Then check for tension in the muscles of the face and allow the face to become softer, especially around the eyes and the jaw. Let there be relaxation there. And being upright is a very, not only stable, but very dignified way to sit. Because here in our practice, we are, if you like, awakening that inner dignity, stability, actually that inner quality of being awake. In fact, as you know, in this tradition, we speak of Buddha nature, which means that all of us have that potential to totally awaken to the state of a fully enlightened Buddha. So as we sit like this, it's like we're reminding ourselves that we are basically dignified and upright. However much during the day and so forth we have experiences that make us feel some other way. You know, the turbulence, the disturbing emotions, they all create a sense of unease and often anxiety and so forth. So here we are reminding ourselves of our deep awakened quality. And the front of the body is naturally open, and that is also highly significant because it reminds us that our job, if you like, is to communicate with others, is to help others, work with other people. That's really what makes life meaningful, that connection with others. And if we look closely, as we're invited to in this tradition, then we see how we are deeply connected with beings, other beings, and with our environment, of course. So benefit others, we need to be open to them. So this open-hearted quality is represented by the front of the body, totally open, exposed. And then, as part of our motivation, we remember how we are just a few people out of billions on this planet in terms of humans, and then countless other creatures, seen and unseen. According to the Buddha, many kinds of beings that we cannot even see. And all of them are in a state of dukkha. They are propelled by confusion, ignorance, anger, attachment, and so forth. Many disturbing emotions and feelings, motivations. Often we only see physical suffering, but there is so much, as we know, inner suffering as well, mental suffering, experienced by countless beings. So somehow, as we practice, we do not forget that. We remember that what we are doing, may it be beneficial, may we be of benefit, even if it's just for a few people. May we be of benefit to others. And of course, we can make a motivation that in the future we become beneficial for really numberless beings. Okay. So in order to be of benefit to others, we need to have both stability of mind as well as great insight into the truth, into how things exist. And we need deep loving kindness and compassion. So we start with the stability aspect. We need to be able to have a mind that is relatively pacified and centered, not jumping around all over the place all the time like a wild elephant, mad elephant even. So we engage in the breath awareness practice where we simply bring our attention to the sensation of breath as we breathe in and out in a natural way. Breath at the tip of our nostrils. Or if that proves difficult, you can focus on the rising and falling of your abdominal muscles of the stomach and focus on that. And the thing is, the point is to be still and relaxed, but also very aware, very attentive, so that if thoughts come, as they will, and take us away, hijack us, if you like, then we should recognize that, let them go, and come back to the breath. And it doesn't matter how often we need to do that. We just calmly, precisely engage in this practice, not expecting any kind of result or perfection, because that's not going to come. Not yet. So we'll sit quietly for 10 minutes. If you get tired, very tired, then you could stop after 5 minutes and then start again. But let there be an awareness, a stream of awareness, focusing on breath. And when you're distracted, recognize that distraction, let it go, and come back to the breath. Okay. Is this the first time you have done such meditation?
Not really, but like never successfully.
No, don't. Let's not. We're not talking about success or anything.
I've been exposed to the concept many times.
Okay. So actually, there are several things that I have which I could look at. We could look at. But is there anything from anyone here at the moment that you'd like to ask about or discuss? We'll come to the Zoom friends later. Is there anything?
Is there like a path?
Sorry?
Is there like a path
A path?
discovering the mind?
Is there a path for discovering the mind? Is the question. Yes, there are different kinds of path. More sudden paths, some people promote that, and more gradual paths. Mainly in our tradition, we work with gradual paths, recognizing that most people are not yet able to go deeply enough. They don't have that potential right now. They have the potential, they don't have the ability to be profound and focused enough, if you like, to go straight to the depths of the nature of the mind. So yeah, there is a path, and its stages are very clearly laid out in the Indian Buddhist tradition. Several of those traditions. The one we follow is called Stages of the Path to Enlightenment, Lamrim, which originated in this format originated in the 11th century with Dipankar Srijanan, Atisha. Atish was a great teacher from Bengal, who also went to Tibet and taught in Tibet, because by then Buddhism had been transmitted there. So he is, and then following on from that, the Tibetans really took to that tradition and have elaborated on that and written very profound treatises based on that path. And the point being that one has to gradually prepare the mind for going deeper, deeper, deeper. So, for example, if you take let's say at the outset that, of course, the practice that is being, the overall practice that helps us throughout the path is to have that sense of awareness, to work with, to understand that we have a very distracted mind at the moment, and to work with awareness to stabilize, to slow down and develop our attention on the body, on our feelings, and so on, so that we begin to make of the mind an instrument that can actually focus and go deeper. It's just like having a very good instrument to work with. Because right now our mind, if we look, it's all over the place, right?
It's controlling us.
Yeah. It's not that we're always angry or lustful, but there's just so many different distractions, thoughts and memories and plans and all sorts of things, right? Hurtling through the mind of most people. There may be some fortunate people whose minds are already quite pacified. Could be. So within that understanding that we're developing more and more awareness and sensitivity, there are certain topics which we investigate, which help us to develop more conviction and prepare us for for the long haul, if you like, because it's not something that's going to be achieved quickly. From the Buddhist perspective, we've been distracted and disturbed, not just in this life, beginninglessly, right? Beginninglessly. So to reverse that, it's not going to happen very quickly. It's not, obviously, it takes time. This is for most people. There may be, again, some special people who can go very rapidly through these stages and even skip some of the stages. It's quite possible. But normally we need to go stage by stage. Just as somebody who's training, weightlifting or bodybuilding or athlete, whatever, they have to do stage by stage training. They can't suddenly, go for, they have to build up their stamina and strength, obviously. So that's what we're doing. And we start with four reflections, which are so important and said to be the foundation, which help really turn our mind, can help turn our mind towards spiritual practice. And they are the reflections on the precious human life, the reflection, meditation on death and impermanence, on actions and their consequences, and on dukkha, suffering nature of samsara. So these are very profound reflections, meditations, which can, in the case of precious human life, they can make us feel very happy and to rejoice that we have this human opportunity, because the reflection is done in a way that compares it with all kinds of other circumstances and shows us how fortunate we are, what we have in this particular situation as a human, and what we have been able to avoid by being a human. So all this can make us extremely energized and happy. But following on from that, excuse me, is the reflection on death and impermanence. That what we have is very fragile, destined to dissolution. We don't know when we're going to die. So, yeah, that brings in a sense of urgency and caution, if you like. Caution comes then also even more when we look at the third topic, which is karam, actions and their effects, actions and consequences. So we see how actions of body, speech, and mind have consequences. And if they are unwholesome actions, they have suffering consequences. So we go into this very deeply in that section on actions and consequences. And that makes us a bit more sober, you could say, makes us more mindful and aware of how we talk, how we think, how we act. That's what it's designed to do, and to show us how habitual patterns of action have been dominating us for so long, and that we need to reverse the ones that are creating problems for us, of course, and to build up the ones that are good. If we have habits of generosity and discipline and so forth, that's very useful. But there are many, as we know, which are not so useful, so they have to be worked with. So that's, and then the fourth topic, basic topic on suffering of samsara, that is really taking us deeply into how unsatisfactory our own life is, how suffering it is, as well as all the other states of existence in samsara, from the God realms down to the hell realms, with us humans and animals in between. it's all suffering. In the sense, there's no lasting satisfaction, and there's tremendous pain, physical pain, mental pain, especially stressing the mental confusion and pain. So that's just the nature of samsara, because it is driven by ignorance, anger, attachment, and so forth. So we look at these things deeply, and that can help us be motivated to go deeper, study the nature of the mind, not just study it, but realize it, so that we are no longer the victim, slave of our disturbing emotions, governed, the principal one being ignorance, which confuses us, makes us believe in an independent I, me, mine, which becomes so powerful that it dominates everything we do and think and say. So I don't know if that begins to answer your question, but there is a path. Those who say, for example, some very gifted, famous people who have said there is no path to truth, well, one can see what they're saying. They're saying that if there's a profound urgency and passion in the mind to discover the truth, and if we pay 100% attention moment by moment to everything we do and say and think, then of course, then they're saying there could be a possibility of going beyond all of our habitual patterns, going beyond our conditioning, and being in the in the sublime present moment, whatever, in a state of awareness. But that is not an easy thing to develop. And many may argue, many more traditional Buddhists may argue, that you could only accomplish that anyway if you had already had a lot of mental training in previous lifetimes. And that's why one is able to do this now, because one's already gone through a lot of the preparation. The mind is already, compared to most people, a very fine instrument when you're born. It has to be awakened, of course, again, but they've gone through a lot already, practice. So such people may be able to dispense with a lot of the so-called path, but most people can't, because we haven't done the homework in previous existences, let alone in this one. I mean, it's like the extraordinary cases are there aren't there, of people, young children in the East and West, who are child prodigies, who can play instruments or sing or so forth in an extraordinary manner without having been taught, hardly been taught at all. Suddenly they can, they're just so gifted. So then, in the same way, they don't have to go through so many stages of training that an ordinary person would. And we would say it's because they've already been very gifted in the past and done that in the past. So I don't know if you have more to ask about your question. I mean, your question is directly related to mind. So of course, there are many, many practices for working with mind and mental factors, study, and then reflection and meditation. So all that constitutes the path, quite apart from the other things like having the right kind of effort, the right kind of livelihood, not engaging in a livelihood that harms others, for example. All these would be deemed necessary prerequisites to gain a deep understanding of our mind. Because if we're engaged in something that harms, manufacturing weapons of destruction, or being a butcher, or involved in the, animal, meat business, then that's the kind of pollution connected with that would prohibit us from going perhaps deeply enough. We would need to stop that kind of activity. We'd need to have the right kind of speech, wisdom, intention, effort, meditation, so on and so forth. What do you think? Do you think a path is needed?
Path, maybe you would get confused.
You would get confused if you're walking on that path. Why? If there's a clear path from here to the market, why would you get confused if you're walking on it? You would get confused if you didn't know the way, yeah, and you went off the path, which might be exciting, of course, for some people, but it wouldn't get you to where you want to get to easily, would it? Why is a path confusing?
What if you're not able to see the path at the moment?
Well, that's why we have to study. The gentleman said, maybe, what if you can't see the path at the moment? Well, the path is very, very clearly delineated in the teachings. And of course, the path, the outer path, you have to have light, or you take a torch or whatever. If it's a dark night and there's no bijli, then you take a torch. Then you can see the path, and then you appreciate the path, especially in dangerous terrain. And our mind in that sense is quite dangerous. This is also being said. It has the potential to sidetrack us. It has the potential to make us, as we know, anxious, depressed, angry, full of frustration, full of desire. Our mind has the potential to really disturb us and make us harm others. So in that situation, don't we need a technique, a path to work with this very marvelous, but also potentially dangerous mind? Marvelous because it can attain, deep, deep understanding of the truth and wake up completely, but also dangerous if it goes in the wrong direction. So I'm interested in why you don't appreciate path. Maybe you haven't studied enough to know about Buddhist paths. I mean, when you want to get from, who is it coming from Rajuri Garden? You were. Yeah. Coming from Rajuri Garden to here, you looked at the metro map, right? Or you knew how to get here. There was a very clear path, I mean, metros aren't arbitrary, they don't take different routes each day, I mean, they don't come off the track and start going overland or something, or, down roads. There's a very clear path. There's a very clear track. And that's why it gets you here on time, Otherwise, you'd still be walking around in wherever, Connaught Place or Punjabi Bagh or INA, wondering how to get here. So paths are very useful. But yes, we have to realize that at some point, a path, in some sense, like a map, is not the actual territory, in the sense that, okay, say that meditation on death and impermanence I mentioned. Yeah, it's very valid, but death and impermanence meditation right now for us is just words. What is required of us is to investigate, reflect, and meditate on it so that it becomes some kind of living experience, which motivates us to practice, not just some intellectual information. You see, because even if we have had people close to us who die, we very quickly kind of forget it in the sense of how it applies to me. We may still, of course, feel quite sad, very sad that that person is gone, but somehow it doesn't motivate us to approach spiritual practice in a very dynamic way. It's still like, yeah, okay, people die, it's sad, but it doesn't make us really urgent about spiritual practice, which is the purpose of that. But I'd like to know more from you about why paths are invalid. It's a very important topic you have raised.
Kabirji,
Yeah, Vishal.
sometimes people can get too attached to the path, or
Yes.
they can get too uptight about
Yes.
the path. Right?
Yes, yes.
And even though they need to like move on or probably look at things from more broader perspective, but they don't do it right because they're too attached. What are your thoughts on?
Yeah, Nishad is saying that we can become attached to the path and become very rigid about it. That, of course, is possible. But if you remember that the path is simply a string of words and concepts put together, which is pointing towards some deeper experience. Remember the four reliances, that not to rely on the words but on the meaning, and not on the superficial meaning but the deeper meaning, and to do that with a wisdom consciousness, not with a distracted superficial consciousness. So if we're doing that, going deeply with the right state of mind, then we come to something which is beyond words, beyond so-called path. Path is simply you could say, a stream of awareness going in a particular useful direction, which helps us go deeper in a more profound manner. So I don't think we should be afraid of paths. But yeah, as with everything, if we stick to it and become rigid and, we could be proud of our path and all of these different things, then it's just, ruining it. We see it as an indicator, just like a map is an indication, of how to go. The metro map is an indicator. Then on the metro is different experience. Otherwise, it's just different colored lines on a map. What do you say, Prashant? You've had experience of a path, or you just read things that have questioned paths, maybe?
So I think this sharing. Sorry, I'm speaking.
Just, I wanted some feedback from Prashant since he asked the question. Then we'll come to you, sir.
So I think that instead of finding the path, looking for ways to find it and start walking.
Indeed, yeah. That's our situation. In the beginning, we don't even know there's a path. Well, we've heard of it, we don't know where it is or where it starts. So that's why we have to investigate, we have to study. We have to see what is being said. We have to see the outlines of particular, in this case, spiritual traditions, and see if they have something which seems to be meaningful that they're saying. But in Buddhism, very much a sense of different stages of path, a path which begins to set us on the right track by helping us to engage in more positive actions, and then that bringing us a good future. Then the path which helps us to actually liberate ourselves from suffering completely, the path of ethical conduct, concentration, and then wisdom, those paths. And then even beyond liberation for ourselves, then the paths that help us to develop great compassion, and which help us to guide us all the way to Buddhahood, full awakening. So there are all these different levels of paths, just for happiness, more happiness in the future, for liberation, our own liberation, called nirvana, and then for not just nirvana, but to go beyond nirvana and to work for the benefit of others and attain the state of a Buddha. All of these require paths. Just like you want to go just up to Panipat, you need a path. You want to go up to Ambala, there's a further path. You want to go up to Chandigarh and beyond, up to Dharamshala or up to Leh or whatever, then there's further paths to be taken. And it all depends on the path, on having a good map and a good guide, actually, very often. It's not enough to have a map sometimes, because the map, when you see the terrain, you say, wow, this is dangerous. It looked kind of colorful on the map, nice, well-produced maps, from wherever, Germany, even we have good maps in India now. But you have a good map, but the terrain is whoa. So you need a guide. We need guides, just like we need a guide or tutor to help us, with anything that requires some deeper reflection, study, skill, learning an instrument, learning mathematics or whatever properly, we need a guide. We need someone who's done it, someone who's already been on that path, if you like. So I suggest you study, which is what, or investigate Buddhist paths and other paths and see what seems to make most sense to you. Because, yeah, if one just dives in and doesn't know what one's doing, if one, doesn't have the mental capacity to develop the kind of intense, awareness and attention that is required in the more sudden or the more quick paths, sudden approach, then we can't get anywhere. So Buddhism speaks of paths, and they've been followed for hundreds, thousands of years, and proved to be very effective for people if they follow them properly and in the spirit of the path, not just the words, but what it means, to go deeply into that. It doesn't mean a path is exactly the same for everyone either. Maybe slight differences. There are many different nuances within even Tibetan Buddhism, slightly different approaches. So I suggest you study a bit. That's the way.
Thank you.
You were asking?
I was contributing, but now.
Please. Yeah.
There's a sheer impermanence, in terms of the literal unreliability, to say, not in terms of Buddhism per se, but a chosen path, then the fickle nature of nature itself around your destination, or own abilities, which could, like I said, in the literal sense, not in relation to exactly the teachings of Buddha, as well as the 7 paths of enlightenment.
There's an eightfold path.
Sorry, 8-fold path.
But that's just 8 factors we need to take into consideration. But what you're saying is what? That there's
in the modern age,
there's so much uncertainty and
impermanence and uncertainty can be the only thing that can make you judge your path by the end of it, because obviously I'm sure there's a level of conviction and concentration when you can put forward and probably can achieve your destination as opposed to going straight.
not understanding exactly what you're saying, actually.
That's why I retracted from it.
I think, of course, impermanence is a fact of life. Confusion is a fact of life right now. Hope, expectation, all these things we experience. But I think if with a good motivation and some perseverance, we study a little bit what, for example, Buddha taught in the basic teachings, it could be very useful, because it's outlining where we are, why we suffer, and that there is a remedy for it. It's like having a doctor who is very clear-headed and who knows exactly the situation, knows your disease, your problem, doesn't gloss over it and say, kuch nahi hai, just take this pill and go. He looks very closely at our suffering. He knows the cause. He knows what would be the remedy, because we know the cause, and for that particular problem, cause, there's an antidote, if you like. The main cause being ignorance, and the antidote is wisdom. So, Buddha experimented and found that to be the truth. So we have and then there's the path. There's that sense that, yes, it can be done, and this is the way. Yeah. So it's like you're sick, there's a cause of your sickness can be cured, and this is the way. This is the regime you have to follow to cure your sickness, the sickness of suffering, sickness of samsara, perpetual dissatisfaction, restlessness, and pain, and so forth. So This needs to be, again, studied. That's why we speak of study, reflection, and meditation. All three are necessary. Because if we start meditating without any study, reflection, it can be just like a shot in the dark, you know. You don't know what you're doing. Or you may have heard something and you just follow some instruction, which is not a full instruction. So, yeah, we need to be careful. There's plenty of people around giving us their advice and quick methods, because we are in a hurry nowadays. And not many people want to spend 20, 30 years, you know, or a lifetime or more practicing or studying. We want something quick. So in that circumstance, there are plenty of people, giving a quick fix, which is just that. It gives a fix, but it's temporary. Often it's just building up our ego a little bit, building up our, yeah. It's not deep enough. It's not going to the heart of the problem, which is grasping at an I, a me, a mine, self-grasping, ignorance. This is the great contribution of the Buddha, seeing the depth, deep cause of why we suffer. Hold on, there is some material in chat. Holy Dharma path is the medicine given by the skilled physician to people who accept they are sick since beginningless time. Yes, indeed. I think if we know our path, we'll save a lot of time of our life by walking straight towards it clearly, yes. Example, if we want to be a spiritual teacher or work on our spiritual evolution, we can work clearly for it, knowing it's our path. Yeah, knowing your path and then working on it. Yeah. Instruction of the spiritual teacher is like medicine. Could be like medicine, yeah. If we're skillful, we can take life situations as medicine, even when things don't work out. We can learn from those mistakes if we've made mistakes, or if people are not nice to us. Well, that's perfect teaching, actually. It's just teaching us in real life what the Buddha already taught. First noble truth is truth of suffering. So if we expect spirituality to be all, you know, light and, you know, grace, love, and then someone comes and spits in our face or cheats us, you know, we could even be thankful to that person at some point later, probably. Oh, thank you for reminding me that this is the nature of reality right now. And my own reaction, being very upset at it, shows me how much I need to still train my own mind. Being so upset with something which is just the truth. It's like being very upset when you know, get sick, or very upset if you cut your hand. You get very angry. It's just what's going to happen in life. People are going to mistreat us. People are going to say nasty things to us, betray us. All kinds of things are going to happen in life. That's all reminding us of, you know, Buddha's teachings. So that becomes a path also, a path to understanding. So it's not just our spiritual teacher or the books who are showing us, you know, revealing the path, you know, revealing what needs to be done. What do you think? Let me unmute these poor people on Zoom. Yeah. What else? Of course, if we were able to abide single-pointedly with crystal clear awareness in the present moment and not be affected by the sense of, oh, I am meditating or I am being aware, and if we didn't have any extraneous thoughts and memories are coming up to disturb us, if we could have this pure awareness moment by moment, then no problem. But how many people have that? A fully qualified, pristine, pure awareness, moment by moment. We don't have that. So, how many of us can say, like, for example, the great sage Jiddu Krishnamurti, how many of us can say that, like him, and I believe him, he says when he goes on his morning walk or whatever for an hour or so, he doesn't have a single thought. For us, that's strange, right? It doesn't mean he's unconscious. It means he's just being present with whatever is there on his walk. He's walking and there with the environment. Doesn't go on his walk to think. Not that it's bad to go on a walk to think. If there's something deliberate or something you need to work out, it could be quite useful to think and walk, actually. But he's saying that he doesn't have a single thought as he is engaged in his morning walk, means that there's nothing superficial there. It's just pure awareness, moment by moment. So, and of course, he speaks about truth being a pathless land, because people were trying to force him to be like a kind of messiah or great guru, and he completely rejected that, gave all that up, dissolved the organization that had been built up around him when he was still in his 30s. And then he taught for another 60 years almost. Yeah. I think, virtually. So paths are considered very useful, as they are in daily life. I mean, sometimes I'm the sort of person, if I go climbing on a hill or something, I often like to go off the path, just for the heck of it, actually. But usually I have a very hard time. Often I have to come back to the path, especially if it's rocky or there's thorns and stuff. And I just often give up and come back to the path. Grudgingly, because I like a bit of adventure. But paths are quite good news, especially in dangerous terrain. Imagine not having any idea where you are in a desert, not knowing the direction or path or anything, or in the Australian outback. You could go around in circles. You could die of thirst very quickly if you didn't have a path and a guide also. We need paths. So the mind is a dangerous neighborhood. Can be a dangerous neighborhood. Can also be a blissful neighborhood, depending on how much we've trained it. But for many of us, it's a very painful neighborhood, at least part of the time. This is what I found. You can have a mind which is really very okay and quite happy and balanced during the day, even during the night. But then you get up in the night or you get up early in the morning, then it's like a different experience, what your mind is going through. So our mind has to be very carefully monitored and worked with. Otherwise, it can lead us to hell. I've just told you why Kay didn't talk about a path, because he was trying to show the quick approach. He felt paths could be just, distracting for people, or they were taught maybe by people who didn't know what they're talking about. Yeah, we can get, as Vishad said, we can get attached to paths. And because people take the map for the reality also, I think. The path is not the reality. If the path for us means words and concepts, then that is not the truth, right? Truth is not a word or a concept, or even a subtle concept. It's a living awareness, reality.
So I just found something written in my notes which needs elaboration. Can I read?
If it's short, yeah, nothing too long for you. Yeah.
Okay, so it says that path in Buddhism means a moment of consciousness. Path is an actual consciousness in your own mind. Teachers, books, just aids.
Yes, good. That's it. Yeah, path is a consciousness, actually. It's well put. That's from a text, is it? Or a
No, it's
teaching?
from my notes. From my notes.
From your notes, yeah. Of Rajan Sir's teaching.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So of course, that's what it is. It's not a concept, not a word. It's our own awareness. It's our own consciousness. So if we're studying precious human life, and the words are there, that how wonderful it is not to be an animal or born in the hell realm or whatever, then those are words. Then we use our mind, our consciousness to reflect on that, and then it becomes some kind of, it takes on more meaning, more reality through our awareness, which is a consciousness. This is what we mean. Awareness, consciousness, mind. Yeah. So paths, that's a good point. Very good. Paths are consciousnesses in Buddhism. They're not to be taken any other way. On paper, they look like words, and we study them, and they are words and concepts, but it's for consciousness to go deeper and to progress towards realization.
Not sure. Kabirji, can you explain what do you mean when you say paths are like conscious?
A path refers to a consciousness. A map
So
is
I also
map is a path, but when you walk on it, that's a different experience. When you're actually walking on the path, experiencing the path with your body and mind, that's a different experience. So when you reflect on death, it's just words in the text and concepts, but when you really reflect and meditate on it, it becomes something that could even shake us up quite a bit, and remind us and keep us very, very focused on making our life meaningful rather than wasting it. You know, then it becomes, then it's become a very powerful consciousness that is motivating us based on the path of reflection on death and impermanence. Were you saying something, Anushri?
Yes, so like Dharma, he told us that it's what to abandon and what to adopt, and there are two types of Dharma. One is the scriptural knowledge, which is like what you're talking about, is the words and the symbols and the text which you heard. And one is the Dharma of realizations, which I think is the path, right?
Exactly.
Dharma of realization, yeah, which protects you from suffering, yeah.
What protects us is not our library, obviously, but although it can, our library of books can protect us from other distractions. But at a deeper level, what saves us from suffering and leads us to enlightenment or whatever, or renunciation, is not the books, but or the scriptural understanding, but the realization that comes through. Often, even there could have been people, many people in the past, who didn't rely on any books because they were illiterate. But because they had great teachers or realized teachers, they were able to, develop their minds to a tremendous degree and attain those realizations, through the example and the teachings of the teacher. So yeah, and to go deeper than the words, because the teacher was there as the embodiment. And traditional teaching was to give a teaching, then send off the disciple to reflect and meditate, come back later, share your experience, and then the teacher would evaluate whether they thought the disciple had really understood it deeply or not, whether they had a realization or not, or whether it was still just more superficial knowledge. So that was the way the fortunate disciples had it in the past. They didn't go around with lots of books. There weren't so many books in those. I mean, there weren't so many books in the 8th century or earlier.
Kabirji, would it be fair to say that you're comparing map with books here and
Comparing maps
with books in the context of the path, and the experiences that are coming from the book? It's like you learn like from the books, but then you experience it, and then it's like a path.
Yeah, you have to experience it. Then it becomes a valid path. Otherwise, it's like you can look at the metro map and think, wow, this is amazing, and how easy. But then when you actually get to Rajiv Chowk station and you have to navigate, if it's the first time you've been there, then yeah, it's not just that nice little, hub where all these other lines are coming in. It's this vast, uh, uh, confluence of humanity and so forth. And then you begin to understand, okay, this is Rajiv Chowk, and okay, what's over there, and all these exits and all this, you have to. It takes a while, Then you could be distracted by the eating places, or by attractive or ugly people, all sorts of things. That's the actual reality, isn't it? The path, going up and down the escalators, having the long lines to queue at, being careful to avoid, the women's compartment, and going, where you're supposed to go. All this is the reality of the metro, which is not just a nice lines on a map, on a metro map. So yeah, we need the realization. And once you've been to these places in person and navigated it, then you can help other people. Because otherwise, you could only show them the map, and it wouldn't prepare them for the actual experience. We have to go through it. That's why it's definitely a consciousness. It's an experience which the mind is going through and developing deeper understanding, awareness, experience. What else, folks? I'm going to finish at 8 sharp today because I'm a bit under the weather, and also late nights and late eating is not helping me. Sorry to be selfish. We got 15 minutes. Hoping the fourth wave hasn't come yet, right? They're expecting the fourth wave later, quite a bit later. I've been in contact with quite a few people recently without a mask, and I'm wondering if that was wise. Anyway, could just be slightly under the weather or seasonal flu. There's all sorts of germs floating around. Some very, ancient ones. There's a whole lineage of viruses and bacteria, I'm sure, quite apart from COVID. So yes, what else, folks? You can sit quietly for a little while also. That might be good. Up to you. You could, do you all know the, I'm sure you all don't know the mantra of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha? Do you know? We haven't done it much. We've done a little bit the Avalokiteshvara mantra, compassion and medicine Buddha, Tara, but we haven't recited Lord Buddha's mantra much. And this is these early 2 weeks of the Tibetan New Year are very connected with Lord Buddha and his manifesting many amazing miracles at Shravasti, which is a place in northern UP, not that far from Lucknow, northeast of Lucknow. The Buddha spent many rainy season retreats there, and he also performed some miracles there, to say, which he didn't do normally at all, but he felt the necessity to do so in order to convince some people who are really going off track, off the path, you could say. He brought them back on the path through miracle activities. Anyway, these weeks are very much a time of year when we remember Lord Buddha. Yeah. Okay. So you want to chant Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra for a little while? It's the mantra is not that difficult. It's starts like many mantras, Tayata, Om, Mune Mune, referring to the teacher, the sage, Mune Mune, Mahamune, Mune Mune, Mahamune, Soha. So Tayata, Om, Mune Mune, Mahamune, Soha. Tayata, Om, Mune Mune, Mahamune, Soha. Yeah, that's so we can recite it a few times, and we can feel. I mean, you have this beautiful statue behind me. It's not Shakyamuni Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha is that one to my right. But you can visualize the Buddha. You can look at the Buddha, gaze at the Buddha. Said to be very auspicious, virtuous to gaze at the Buddha because of what he represents and what he achieved and what he taught. And you can feel much inspiration. You could feel gratitude for teachings of the Buddha, which have helped so many people and are still helping people to be free from suffering. Yeah. So he's the great sage. So the mantra reminds us of that. The sage who cuts the root of our suffering. Kaya tha Om Mune Mune Maha Munaye So. 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 See, mantra can also, of course, be a path because it can lead to certain levels of consciousness. because it is consciousness. When we recite the mantra, it's not just there's a sound, there's an awareness, there's a feeling, an awareness is coming. And mantra traditionally means mind protection, sacred syllables, which protect the mind from disturbing thoughts and so forth. So it's actually helping, it is a consciousness, it's helping our consciousness to become more serene, pure, and so forth. So mantra is also a path, can be a path. If it's done properly, if it's just a distraction, reciting mantra and you're actually thinking of something else or whatever, then it doesn't become a valid path really so much. It has to be the awareness. Okay, we'll dedicate now because there's 4 minutes left. So dedication is very important. We motivated at the beginning. Dedication is important because we've created some kind of positive energy together. And so we can dedicate it to happiness and welfare of all of us, to our never being separated from authentic spiritual paths and the consciousnesses that are developing realizations, the actual meaning. And may that be long-term, this and future lives. May we never be separated. May all of our teachers, our holy teachers, like His Holiness Dalai Lama, Kepje Lama Zopa Rinpoche, may they all have long and healthy lives. And may all their wishes be fulfilled. May there be more peace prevail in these troubled times. Suffering of beings be lessened. Okay, so thank you all very much. Take care, and hope to see some of you Sunday morning. That will be nice if you can join. And then after Sunday, from Monday is of course the 14th. There's questions being put to Jetsunma Tenzin Pamo. That's at 6:30 on the 14th. I'll be in Kushinagar, but that will be hosted by Dr. Renuka Singh, our director, and Nivita, who is working here at the center. I hope to join in on Monday, but it will be in the background. But I hope to see some of you on Sunday morning. Okay, thank you very much. Good night.